Welcome to the On Your Mind podcast, where we are changing the mental health narrative, bringing hope and solutions. Here's your host, Timothy J. Hayes, psychologist.
Dr. Gore received his medical degree at the University of Illinois School of Medicine, then received his postgraduate education at Northwestern University's Institute of Psychiatry, while also completing a 3-year program at the Gestalt Institute of Chicago. He then studied yoga and Tai Chi and began an apprenticeship with Dr. Ballantyne at the Center for Holistic Medicine at the Himalayan Institute, then in Glenview, Illinois. This was the first of its kind in the Midwest. Dr. Gore has published a book titled Holistic Medicine: Physical Health, Peace of Mind, and Clarity of Consciousness. He is a frequent speaker and blogger and enjoys teaching in the community. His vision is to help people with their symptoms of illness, educate patients so they feel empowered, and help them transform their lives using holistic medicine. Dr. Gore, thank you so much for joining us here today. It's great to see you face to face.
Yes, I feel the same way.
I was hoping you could start us off by telling us a little bit about how you got into the work you do and what drives your passion for it.
Well, I got into the work over a period of time, really. Initially, I went into medical school and then took some time off after that, and then got into my own therapy. So I was looking for something that I really wanted to do, and I felt in my own therapy, I really felt like something clicked in that I could really help people this way. So then I went did a residency at Northwestern University in psychiatry. And so I practiced therapy for a little while, but it wasn't completely satisfying. And then I became ill and started to get doctored up, but that wasn't satisfying either. So through good fortune, I was referred to the Himalayan Institute in Glenview at the time, and they were practicing holistic medicine. And I got involved with them, and I said, "This is something that I think I'm ready to do." You know, they were practicing mind-body medicine back in the 70s and early 80s. It wasn't that popular then; it was kind of new, and so it struck a chord with me. And I remember, I just went through everything. I had already done a lot of therapy on myself and was working, but I wasn't really that happy. And then they started to talk about meditation and yoga. So I started to do those things. That helped a little bit. And then they started working with my diet, and that helped a little bit. And then they started using homeopathic remedies, and that helped. So all of a sudden I was, using all these things, as physical, energetic, mental, and spiritual techniques. And I felt like this is what I really need. This is what I need for myself. And then I became a doctor there and started to work with patients like that. That's how I got into it.
Wonderful. And as you mentioned, it was back in the 70s, in the late 70s, that you were connected with that institute?
I was actually connected in the early 80s, but they were there in the late 70s. Believe it or not, they had 5 full-time physicians working in holistic medicine in Glenview at the Himalayan Institute at that time. I came along in the early 80s.
And so, as a therapist myself, I understand how important it is to take a whole person approach and think about, the thoughts, the emotions, the body, the diet, the exercise, a sense of purpose in life, fitting into a community, sense of love, etc. And you cover that beautifully in your book. Your book is titled Holistic Medicine, and the subtitle is Physical Health, Peace of Mind, and Clarity of Consciousness. And what year did you publish that? Was that 2015?
That's a good question. I have to look in the book to see.
It says 2015 was the copyright for that.
No, that's probably the year.
And as I read that book, and was one of the things that really kind of expanded things. I'd heard a little bit about it in different ways. I've been tuned into alternative medicine things for quite a while, but one of them was the different body types in the Ayurvedic medicine and the different energies and how that connects with food. What can you give us as an overview of that?
Well, there's a lot of ways to look at human functioning. You can look at it through homeopathic, you can look at it through allopathic, and you can look at it through Ayurvedic. So in Ayurvedic medicine, they say, well, we're made up of earth, we're made up of fire, and we're made up of wind and space. So they call it Kapha, Pitta, and Vata. And there are different constitutional types. So the Kapha type is earthy, solid, and stolid. And if they get too much, they would get inert and more depressed, become like a human mountain. The fire type is more made of fire and illumination. Digestive fire, for instance, is an example. The light in the eyes, the memory. And fire is a wonderful asset. And this is how we transform things in life. We transform food, we transform ideas. But if there's too much, then the person burns. They burn themselves, they burn others. Anger is associated, impatience and anger is associated with an imbalance. And then the last one is Vata, or a combination of space and motion. And Vata is like the wind. It's the creative energy in a person. It's to make things move. And the Vata is associated with movement and creativity, and also digestion. And if there's too much, if that becomes imbalanced, then we get anxiety. So it's another window into a person. Instead of saying, well, looking through the traditional psychological window, you could say, is there a Kapha, Pitta, or Vata imbalance in the person, and try to balance. It's fun to watch how couples get together. Usually an earthy part would be with a fiery part, or an earthy part will be with a Vata creative part. And the Vata creativity will stimulate the earthy person, and the earthy person will ground the creative, little bit of a spacey person, and they blend perfectly. So there's a way to work with these things. And plus, you can work with foods to help these people. For instance, if someone tends to be earthy and depressed, you can give them stimulating foods, Pitta foods, Vata foods. If a person is Vata and too anxious, you can bring them brown rice, basmati rice, cream, yogurts, things that would ground them. So this was another way that we could find to work with someone's psychology through the body, through foods, through lifestyle. For instance, if someone is anxious, we have them listen to classical music. If someone is too depressed, we listen to jazz. So if you get a handle on what the Ayurvedic Kapha, Pitta, and Vata is, you can work with a person's constitution. Does that help you understand?
Yeah. And you have some good examples of it in the book, and the idea that, I can do more with people than just say, okay, think these positive or activating thoughts. I can say, use this music, try some of these foods, pay attention to the foods you're eating that might be contributing to your imbalance. It's a delightful portion of the book. And I know myself that certain foods can be heavy feeling and grounding if I need grounding, but they can also be kind of heavy, oppressive, feeling stodgy or stuck. And I occasionally get this taste for these spicy foods. And I know what's going on then. And I let myself have that. I don't overdo, but I lighten it up. And as I read it in your book, I was just kind of chuckling that, I didn't even know this stuff with the words for it from the Ayurvedic, but I also use it in my life.
It's very intuitive. And everyone, it affects everybody this way. Everybody's usually two of these three doshas. They're either Kapha Pitta or Pitta Vata or Kapha Vata. It's that's the way to do it, just the way you were talking about it.
So in the book, you talk about things that a lot of us these days are doing with our patients: mindfulness, breath work, and the spirituality, etc. One of the things that I don't hear a lot from people, I got introduced to it back in the late 80s myself, was homeopathy. Can you tell us about that side of the work that you do?
Yeah, homeopathy is an energy medicine. And most people, we're not trained to think energetically in the West. I'll just put it like that. And I think my first, when people do yoga, they're working with their bodies, but it's not just physically, it's energetically. When people are working with breath techniques, they're working with energy. Other names for this is prana or chi or ki. So it's been popularized in the martial arts stuff where people would use their chi or their ki, not just their muscle, or they can use pranayama exercises to activate or to cleanse or to prepare for meditation. But believe it or not, we can harness this energy in little pellets, homeopathic pellets, and take it home with us. It's quite an amazing thing. And it took me a little while to get into homeopathy and to actually believe it because my mind was so Western trained. What is this stuff called energy? But we've all experienced energy. Someone will tell us something sad and we're energetically droop. Our physiology hasn't changed that quickly, but something's changed in us. Or the opposite, we hear something and feel happiness or joy. So homeopathy is the use of minerals or plants or sometimes animal tissues and taking these things and turning them into homeopathic remedies that help people. And so, for instance, the classic example we use is an onion. If you peel an onion, you start to have burning lacrimation, burning tears. Now, we have made a remedy out of onion, and we give it to someone who has burning tears. So it could be a person with hay fever. It could be a person with a cold. It could be a person with a flu, but they have the same symptoms as onion. So we give them homeopathic onion. And the homeopathic onion clears up their burning tears. And that's how homeopathy works. It works through what's called the law of similars. There's something, it's called the paradoxical theory of change in psychology. If someone has anxiety and you can have them sit with it and work through it, then the anxiety doesn't get worse, it goes away. It doesn't always happen that way, but that's the whole idea of the law of similars. So in homeopathy, we have a whole slew of remedies that can work with the body and the mind. So in my practice, I have been using both. So somebody comes in with a sore throat and it's right-sided and they crave cold drinks and they're salivating and they're sweating and the sweating is not relieving, I give them homeopathic mercury. Mercury will clear them up. If they come in with a grief, they've had a loss in a relationship or a loss of a job or God forbid they lose a family member, we give them homeopathic natrimur. Natrimur is sodium chloride because salt, it's made from salt. And the homeopaths have discovered that salt has the ability to help somebody let go of the past, let go of old things that some people, the past time heals things. They let go of things, but other people, they can't. Time does not a healer. Things fester. And they hold grudges and they hold, they can't let go. So homeopathic sodium chloride, homeopathic natrimur would help them release, help them let go, help them move on. So I find it as a tool in therapy. It's not trying to get rid of the growth opportunity that they have. Instead, it takes an edge off so that they can grow and can work in therapy or can work things out themselves. So homeopathy turns out to be a wonderful tool, both for the body and for the mind.
And I'm drawn to say that, you mentioned you would give, a mercury homeopathic, and a lot of people would jump right up and say, wait a minute, mercury is poisonous. You don't give people mercury. And so what you didn't quite say yet, but I want you to get into is that when you give a homeopathic and it's mercury based, there's no mercury in it at that point, right? You talk in the book quite nicely about how by the time you're done diluting it, it's diluted so much that there's not even a single molecule of mercury in it, but there's the energy that was there.
That's exactly right. So when I talked about the onion, we would give the onion 1/100 to the 30th in the denominator, if you can imagine all those zeros. So I think at the 9th level, 1/100 to the 9th, according to Avogadro's number, the way I was taught, there's no more possibility of molecules in there. So you're giving the energy of onion. You're giving the energy of mercury. In the old days, the doctors used to give mercury until the person salivated. Salivating was called the end result of giving mercury. Well, we know, and plus they also give, and when I went to medical school, they just stopped using mercurial diuretics, which was causing ototoxicity and stuff. So when we give mercury, we're trying to remove that stuff. It's the law of similars. We'll give it to someone who looks mercurialized and try to remove those symptoms. Does that help you understand?
Yeah. I keep coming back to one of the articles I read when I got introduced to this was that they had given arsenic to rats, and the rats would consume this, not enough to kill them, and it would slowly build up in their system. And they were checking the rat droppings for arsenic, and there was almost none there. And then they developed the homeopathic remedy and gave that to the rats, and some of them, and others they didn't give it to. And when they gave the vibrational energy of the arsenic to the rats who had consumed arsenic, it started to excrete it in the stool. Lots of arsenic was coming out of the rats who got the energy of arsenic without any additional molecules of arsenic, and they were getting rid of it in their stool. And the rats that just ate the arsenic and weren't given the homeopathic remedy, it never came out in their stool, and they remained sick. So it's something, as you said, it took you a while to get into this because of your Western trained mind, to think about the body as physical, and it's an energy system work.
I've seen arsenic work wonders on people with anxiety about their health. We gave a lot of arsenic out, arsenicum in a homeopathic remedy, that is.
Right.
Energy of arsenic. We gave that to help people who were extremely worried about their health, who was obsessive about it and anxious about it. And a lot of times it really helped people. It has that modality. Arsenic is for a person who is very anxious, who is chilly, who is restless, mentally restless. They may be pacing. They're better from hard drinks. They're right-sided. There's a lot of stuff. Every one of these remedies have a lot of components to it, and that's why we can have the beauty of homeopathy is we can have 4 people who are anxious sitting in front of us, and each one we individualize their symptoms and give a different remedy. And not everybody gets Lexapro. Not everybody gets Prozac or Klonopin. Every one person is arsenicum. The other person is natrimir. Another person they don't have problems holding back tears and holding on to the past. They have a problem with boundaries. They have phosphorus. Another one is crying all the time. There are different types of crying. One type of crying, you want to hug the person and comfort them. That's pulsatilla. Another type of crying is so irritating you want to get rid of them and get them out of the office. That's chamomile. So everybody's different. That's the amazing thing about homeopathy, and that's what's so difficult about it. It takes time to really zero in on the person, and it's when you do it and it works, it's like magic, and it's so rewarding. And I think most homeopaths are very passionate about it.
Well, and I what comes to me to say at this point is that I've been in health food stores where they have homeopathic remedies. And it's labeled, here's a homeopathic remedy, and take this if you've got this or this. But what you're talking about is a level of diagnostics, of assessing the individual for all kinds of little nuances to help you figure out, here's a crying person which of these remedies would be right for this kind of crying, or
Exactly.
a crying person who cries this way, and when they drink hot drinks, it gets worse, or they drink hot drinks, it gets better. There's such a level of specificity in the work you do.
Absolutely. Arsenicum is a perfectionist remedy. You see, the pictures on your wall are pretty straight. They're not crooked. But if they were crooked, arsenicum would come in there and straighten them. It lets me know right away. This is arsenicum. They walk right in. Another person is sulfur. Oh, they don't care. It's all thrown around. Everything is all over the place. That's sulfur. So everybody, these remedies have pictures, and you try to, if you study homeopathy over the years, you got to get a picture. You match the picture to the person, and because of the law of similars and because of the energy, you're not really doing anything to anybody because there's nothing in there physical. You're just changing the energy, and by changing energy, then the person heals. The energetic medicine that they have helps them heal their cough, or helps them lower their blood pressure, or helps them have less anxiety, or helps them be less depressed. It's the vital force, the chi, the ki, the prana that you're working with. And that's just such a different way in the West of approaching. None of us grew up with that. We all had to seek this out and learn this. But over the world, people are much more familiar with the whole concept of energy than we are in the United States.
Well, and the other thing that comes up as you're talking about that is that when I first got introduced to homeopathy, one of the concepts that was pushed very strongly for me is, I believe they called it a healing crisis. And they said, look, you're going to get better, but you might have an exacerbation of symptoms. Your symptoms might get worse before they get better. Is that something that you talk to people about on a regular basis? Has that been your experience as well?
Well, there's a couple different ways to practice homeopathy. One is Kentian homeopathy, and that homeopathy you use higher doses, and sometimes you get an aggravation, and then you back off the remedy, and the person is worse, and then better. The Hahnemannian is in his latest edition of the Organon. He goes for lower potency remedies where you avoid the aggravation altogether. The best possible way to do it is to avoid the aggravation altogether. And the person comes in. I had a person come in last week and said, any changes? No, everything's the same. And then I went through, well, how's your energy? And how's your mental clarity? And how's the heavy legs, I'd say, and how's your hot flashes? And so once we went through, that's a matter of fact, that's different. Yeah. So there was no aggravation. There was just kind of a subtle improvement. That really is the best way of doing things. The best improvement that we can have in homeopathy is look for the energy. The person feels better, their energy, their sense of wellness, their mental clarity, and then the rest of them usually clears up, whether it's the problem in the foot or, the stomach problems or asthma or whatever it is.
And I flash on it because I've got, several people I know and they're having and I'm seeing them now, and they're having such intense emotional upset, whether it's rage or anxiety. And I had that thought flash in my mind about, you just said letting go of past, I forget the remedy you had for that. But then I thought, if we gave it to this guy and they had an exacerbation of symptoms, that could be too much to handle. So that's why I asked that.
Right. It depends where the anger is coming from, too. Some people suppress their anger. There's a remedy called staphis that's great for people who can't fight back, who feel submissive, who feel, hurt and humiliated. That's staphis. There's another remedy called nux vomica, which is, hey, I'm the king of the world. Don't get in my way. You get in the way, I push you away, get out of my way. I'm frustrated. That's a completely different remedy. So once again, the angers are different. The depressions are different. The anxieties are different. It's quite, as I talk about it to you, I'm like, who would ever do this? It would take years to learn and take so much time with a person. But this is really the gift of God that God has given us homeopathy. It's just an amazing thing.
And you've had those years of studying this and working with people over this. How many years have you been doing homeopathy?
Pretty much since 1985, 1986. But I have been studying it differently now. As time goes on, you keep on studying different teachers and different people. And it's just, you have to keep on learning. Okay. That's an important part of the holistic medicine. Holistic medicine isn't just about getting fixed. It's about learning. It's about growing. And homeopathy
and not just for the doctor. That's one of the things I loved about reading your book, is that you get excited about teaching the people you work with and getting them to get curious about their own health and their own lifestyle.
Yeah, if a person experiences something and the light bulb goes on, they become very curious and interested because they become self-empowered. And once a patient becomes self-empowered, then they become a student. And once they become a student of their health, they start helping others and then become a teacher. So I see kind of a graduation from a patient to student to teacher. That's what I see in holistic medicine. That's what attracted me about holistic medicine. That's what I wanted for myself. I didn't want a drug just to open up my tubes. I had asthma a long time ago. I have to remind myself. So they gave me theophylline, and I didn't like the way it made me feel. So why do I have asthma? So I started looking, well, get rid of mucus-related foods, all the foods that cause mucus, learn how to breathe, what's emotionally going on in my life, what is, the lungs are in the heart chakra, what does the heart chakra stand for? I wanted to learn all these things because I wanted control of my own body, not somebody else to control my body.
And so you ended up relieving the symptoms of asthma by working at a cause level?
Yeah, I did. I tend to avoid mucus related foods. I lost a little weight. I took some homeopathic remedies for asthma. I worked on my mind. I have to tell you, Tim, that I found when I went through all these different, nutrition, exercise, homeopathy, psychotherapy, everybody had their little niche, but nobody wanted to do the whole thing. I needed everything. I needed a piece here, a piece here, a piece here, a piece here. So for me, my passion evolved to having the whole picture. So I work with my diet. I work with my exercise. I take homeopathic remedies. I use breathing techniques. I do a little meditation. I've got a lot of spiritual stuff. I do some personal prayer. I do some liturgical prayer. Everything you read about, I need it. So I figure if I need it, maybe it helps other people too. So that's the kind of practice that we have at the center, is trying to help people in all these different, some people might need diet more, some people might need energy remedies more, some people might not exercise, some people need the good affirmations, some people need classical psychotherapy, getting into transferences, other people need to just pray. A person is a human being. It's like unfortunately in the Western medicine, we just find an ear, we find a nose, or we find a throat, or we find a nerve ending and try to keep the norepinephrine from being, serotonin from being destroyed. But really, we are people here to grow and learn. So I feel like this kind of medicine is the medicine to help people basically do what they came to this incarnation to do. That's what I believe.
Well, so you just gave us the example of how you needed a whole variety of things to move past the point where you had the symptoms of asthma. I know there's a story in the book about how you worked with your son. Can you tell us that story?
Let's see. My middle son developed croup, and that's a homeopathic story. You want a homeopathic story?
Sure.
Okay. Well, my son developed croup. Croup is laryngeal-tracheal bronchitis. It could be fatal. It's when the throat closes off from inflammation. And I know the moms might listening to this thing heard about this. So when my son had croup, I was really frightened because when I was a kid, my brother developed croup, and I heard him trying to breathe, struggling to breathe. And I remember trying to get a hold of my parents. There was a party at the time, and there was a lot of commotion in the house. And they finally, after a couple of times, I was kind of shy, but I got their attention, and they came up, and then they rushed him to Michael Reese Hospital and did an emergency laryngeal tracheotomy, and he made it. And So when my son started having croup right in front of my eyes, it scared me. But I knew there's a trilogy of croup remedies. And so I did two things. I had my wife come to my side and I gave him what's called spongia. Sponges for when they're barking like a seal. And you can hear it. It's a particular sound of cough. So he was laying on the floor next to his toys, and we gave him spongia. And in about 5 minutes, he started to get up and play with his toys, still barking like a seal. Breathing like that, right in front of my eyes. Now, when things like this happen, I don't believe what my eyes are seeing. So I turned to my wife and said, "Do you see what I see?" And she said, "Yep, I am seeing the same thing you see." So I called a physician. The physician came out to the house and said, he came about an hour later and said he does not need to go to the hospital. He's doing fine. And he was playing, breathing like that, because the energy of spongia has just changed him immediately. And then the physiology took a little while. It's when you see things like this, it's just it's like seeing miracles. And that was my story with my son. So that I felt like that the poetry of the whole thing was that it kind of helped towards my healing too, because I was able to do something to help somebody and then heal my own memories of what happened in my family.
Yeah, that's powerful. We have so many of those things in us that are locked in there, and when they get activated, they start to drive our behavior as adults, and we don't realize that's what's driving our behavior. Like
No,
you said,
don't need a homeopathic remedy to do that. You could just recall it in a session and have the person memory as you know, and energetically, I like the way they think about it, energetically cancel out that energy pattern, and then it's diminished or gone. You can do that with therapy. You can do it with a homeopathic remedy.
well, one of the things that Diedrich Wolzak does in his work, he says, look, when you're activated to an upset as an adult, first you got to own that you're upset. You don't want to blow it off. And then you want to understand it's all happening inside you. And then you want to say, okay, what emotion are you experiencing? And put a name on it. And then ask yourself, is this a familiar emotion? He says it'll always be familiar because we downloaded them in our first 7, 8, 9 years of life. And then when you ask, when's one of the first times I had that emotion? And then you remember, you let it bubble up and you remember, then you basically go back and interview your younger self. And you say to your younger self, what did you make this mean when this happened? Right? So you would be interviewing your younger self. What did you make it mean when your younger sibling or your sibling, older or younger, had the croup and had to go to the hospital and have the trach put in? What did you make it mean about you? And then you don't change the history of what happened, but you can change what you made it mean, what you're carrying around inside of you as a meaning for value of yourself, your skills and abilities, your ability to affect the environment, whether or not you're a good person or a bad person. We download these things and we don't know they're there. And every time that resonant energy comes up and activates them, we start to experience our lives through the filter of that belief. So it's great. You can do it with the homeopathic remedy and break that energy system. You can do it with some of these techniques like Diedrich Wolzak has that 6-step worksheet process. And it's quite powerful when people step into using it.
Yeah, that sounds great. And now I have a way of thinking about it differently. Homeopathically, I think even when we approach it therapeutically, I would say, according to the law of similars, we're canceling out that energy pattern. Literally, there's an energy pattern that's been living there, where you can see them in layers or sheaths. You go down to that energy sheath, and through the law of similars, cancel it out, clean out, recover that energy. On to the next one, and the next one.
And then the energy is available in a different way, and there's different energies there. And of course, most of us understand we need energy flowing through us to be able to function well in life.
I see it like a ladder. I have experienced it like a ladder. I experienced that if I'm not eating properly, my body calls for a lot of attention. that attention gets in the way of my feeling good. The feeling good gets in the way, feeling bad gets in the way of the attention of my growing through the trials and tribulations that come along in everyday living. Now, if I can eat properly, and what I have to do, and the book demonstrates it, I had to go into therapy and work on some of these things that you're talking about, because they were in the way of living life at a higher level. So once I was able to work through some of those conflicts, eat right, work through some of the conflicts, now I can start to see the light shining through and work on my spiritual self. So I actually saw a ladder. Now, can you work on all these different levels at once? Yes, and maybe it's even the right way to do it. But I do think the concept of a ladder is important, because people can get stuck in one area and work on that area and then move to the next area. So I see it as a ladder up. And, we're both therapists. I felt like, I needed something more than just therapy. I needed a spiritual perspective on life, because therapy is really great for psychology. But when I see patients, I make a distinction between what's psychological and what's spiritual. So, and I like to make that distinction so that the patient can give me permission to get spiritual on them. Because I find a lot of people, they get stuck. There's only so many places, not everybody, but some people, they can't move on unless they open up spiritually to something greater. And once they open that up, it's like shifting a level, shifting a gear in a car, and they can move more towards who they really are, to the completion of who they are, the wholeness of who they are, and fulfill the destiny that I feel that everybody here has. Everybody has a unique destiny to fulfill. So I think it's part of the therapy, the way we do it, and I actually include it in terms of holistic medicine, is that everybody comes in. Why do you want to get healed? Not just to avoid pain. That's good, but you want to grow. The whole thing is about growing in an upward direction. Not sideways, not downwards, not some offshoot, but upwards.
So what's that question or series of questions that you ask to get permission to go spiritual with them? What's that process like, moving from the psychological to the spiritual?
Well, that's a, I don't know if I have a specific question. I might be doing some therapy in a session, and let's say I'm thinking of a couple session, and I'm thinking of the man, talking to the man, and I'm going to say, I want you to put your wife first. And he looks at me like I've just hit him over the head with a hammer. I always have fun with this because I think of my own life. Put your wife first. And I say to him, look, if it's a two-way street, we can work psychologically, but this is more spiritual. There are traditions that say you need to give. And one of the ways to give is to put your wife first. And that we're going to talk, that's more spiritual. So is it okay if we talk like that? Because I want to make a distinction. If you want to just talk about how you can communicate better and why you're upset with her and why she's upset with you, we can do that. I call that psychological. But spiritual means there's some aphorisms, there's some spiritual aphorisms, like judging another person favorably, and like giving charity. There's a whole bunch of things that are, I would call spiritual. I wouldn't call them religious, but I call them spiritual. And I get the first, and I say it to the people, and I'll tell you, most of the people are open, and they want it, and they like it, and they're hungry for it. And that's something that I've developed over the years, and I kind of hinted at it in the end of the book too.
Well, yeah, I think you talked about it quite thoroughly in the book at different levels where you were talking about spirituality as a part of the holistic approach. So if you think that we're winding out of time, which we are, and there's an area of the work you do with people or something that's in the book that we haven't even talked about yet, or the practice that you have that you'd like us to include for people, what would that be?
I think that exercise is important. We haven't touched on exercise. So I think just like diet, a person has to individualize their diet. They have to individualize their exercise. So in the book, I put down different kinds of exercise for strength, exercise for flexibility, exercise for aerobic activity. So I find that people don't always think this way. You know, the really great aerobic people aren't always into strength, and the strength people aren't always into flexibility. In yoga, there's a saying, you're as young as your spine. So I've made it a habit to, you know, I do a little Tai Chi, I do a little yoga, I do a little aerobic, I do a little weights, but I don't overdo any of it, because I've come to see that there is no one thing in life that really is it, except the Creator. And you have to develop the ability to we call it sattvic in yoga, to take the middle path so that you don't hurt yourself. And in all these disciplines, whether it's nutrition or exercise or therapy or homeopathy, you want to develop the ability to be kind to yourself and give yourself support and work one step at a time, next right step sort of thing. In all these disciplines, you know, you can't make yourself, don't put yourself down. I'd like to say that. You love yourself. And one of the things we haven't touched on in here is prayer. Is that okay to talk about it?
Sure.
I like personal prayer. And one of the things I've learned to do is to pray with my own words. And I find many patients do this, and it's very powerful. And if you can always turn to personal prayer if things aren't working in life, and I find it very wonderful myself. And for certain patients, it really works. Now, it's not for everybody. You have to ask permission. Some people don't like it. Some people have certain belief systems. So it's always important to respect, but nobody talks about it. I hardly ever hear anybody talk about it in a therapy session. And, you know, we've talked a little bit about combining spirituality with all this stuff: prayer, contemplation, meditation. Meditation is a very safe way of talking about it. But what do you do when you meditate? I mean, I don't think the purpose is to just meditate and go off on a mountain and work orange and be by yourself. That's not what I think. I think the whole idea of meditation is to get really clear and then come back and use what you learned in meditation to elevate the world around us. By the way, none of this is original, Tim.
Yep, I get it. I've heard it a lot of places.
Any credit. No, I don't want any credit for any of it being original. It's all from my teachers and the traditions that I've learned from, okay?
And these are really old traditions, you know, thousands of years old.
Yeah, a lot of it's from yoga, a lot of it is from Kabbalah and Hasidus and Chinese medicine and Ayurveda. I've kind of integrated a lot of them in my life.
And even the origins of what we would call the Western scriptures have the same things. They're thousands of years old and they've got the same wisdom. Well, I thank you so much for joining us. Can you give us the website if people want to find out more or contact you?
It's holistic-medicine.com or Center for Holistic Medicine, Illinois. If they look that up, that's what they've got.
Center for Holistic Medicine or holistic-medicine.com.
There's one in Michigan too. So is that Center for Holistic Medicine, Illinois, or holistic-medicine.com.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, it's delightful to meet you, and thank you for sharing with our audience. And I'm going to reread the book and then continue to follow your work and see where it takes us.
That'd be great. Thank you for the opportunity.
Dr. Gore received his medical degree at the University of Illinois School of Medicine, then received his postgraduate education at Northwestern University's Institute of Psychiatry, while also completing a 3-year program at the Gestalt Institute of Chicago. He then studied yoga and Tai Chi and began an apprenticeship with Dr. Ballantyne at the Center for Holistic Medicine at the Himalayan Institute, then in Glenview, Illinois. This was the first of its kind in the Midwest. Dr. Gore has published a book titled Holistic Medicine: Physical Health, Peace of Mind, and Clarity of Consciousness. He is a frequent speaker and blogger and enjoys teaching in the community. His vision is to help people with their symptoms of illness, educate patients so they feel empowered, and help them transform their lives using holistic medicine. His training included Ayurveda, nutrition, supplementation, energy medicine, including homeopathy and flower essences, and the practical application of yoga and mindfulness as it applies to general medical practice. In 1994, Dr. Gore took over the practice from Dr. Ballantine, and in 1997, he and his wife Carol co-founded the Center in Riverwoods/Deerfield, as it exists today. They have continued the tradition of mind-body medicine, as well as enjoying the collaboration of many like-minded practitioners. Dr. Gore will evaluate a new patient and may treat them as well as help them find the right practitioner and the path at the center, which will help them coordinate their care.
You've been listening to the On Your Mind podcast, offered by Journey's Dream, where we support people through mental health challenges to a place of true and lasting well-being. If you love our show, we invite you to visit onyourmindpodcast.org to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our helpful resources. Thank you for listening.